Hi, and welcome back to the Android video series. In this video, I want to talk about fragments. Now, fragments are introduced in API level 11 as an alternative or a class-based view group solution. But fragments give us so much more capability than view groups. And we're just going to look at a very simple application where I use two fragments. In one fragment, Fragment 1, I'm calling it, I'm just going to have a button, and we can see that button here. This is a toggle button that will show and hide the second fragment. So now fragments are classes, and they have their very own layout XML. So we can see here in the layout folder, in res layout, I have activity main, I have fragment 1 and fragment 2 XML. This is fragment 1's XML file. And we can see that this is a relative layout that wraps its content, that has a background, the color of kind of a light green, and then it has a text view and a toggle button. And the toggle button, I want to look at this. The Android onClick attribute of this toggle button is set to toggle fragment 2. Now, if I look at fragment1.java, I'm seeing onCreateView, which returns a view, and what it's doing is returning the view group container for this fragment after inflating r.layout.fragment1. So that makes sense, right? It returns the container. But there is no button handler there. In other words, in fragment1.java, there is no toggle fragment 2. So remember that we need a button handler someplace. The question is going to be, where does that button handler go? Okay, likewise, here's fragment 2's XML. And we can see that it really doesn't matter whether I put this in a tablet format, or whether as I did with fragment 1, whether I put it inside of a phone layout. It doesn't matter, because the fragment is actually going to be sized to either a particular size or to wrap its content. So fragment 1 is set to wrap its content. Fragment 2 is set to be of a particular size. It really doesn't matter what kind of layout I put it on. However, activity main's layout is what we're going to see. And so when we put these fragments on activity main, that's what we're going to see. So here's fragment2.java, and again, it just inflates fragment 2 and returns its layout container. All right. So now, and again, fragment 2 XML. Okay, so now when we get to the main activity, the first thing we want to do is, after we've defined fragment 1 Java and XML and fragment 2 Java and XML, we want to drag those fragments in to our main activity, XML. So here they are. I've got fragment 1 and I've got fragment 2. Now I wanted to show you how this process happens, because it's a little bit confusing the first time you do it. So let's delete fragment 2 from this layout and do it again. I'm going to drag a new fragment to the layout from the palette. And this is in the layouts palette, and I'll just drop it anywhere. Let's drop it underneath here. And then this dialog comes up, and it tells me to choose the fragment class. Well, I want to choose fragment 2. I could choose another fragment 1 if I wanted to. That would be fine. But I want to choose fragment 2. And now if I click OK, we can see that I get this gray sort of box. So I'm going to kind of align it a little bit. And then, in order to see the fragment, I'm going to actually have to right-click it and go to Fragment Layout. And then normally, that layout is going to be right here. But we can also choose a layout. But the fragment 2 is the layout we want. And there it is. So that's how we drag a layout to the interface and then select it for display. So let's just put it back where it was. Okay, now we have fragment 1 and fragment 2 both displayed in our main activity layout. And if we look at activity main.xml, we see that each of these fragments is given an ID all by itself, fragment 2, fragment 1. And then they have an Android name, and they've also got, out of the tools namespace, they've got the layout. Tools layout is layout fragment 2. So in this way, the activity knows what everything is and where to find all its IDs to generate r.java. So let's look at r.java. We'll take a look at that, and I'll show you that all of these layouts within fragment 1 and fragment 2, here's the layouts, but now look at the ID. We've got fragment 1, fragment 2, and also text view 1, toggle button 1, right? So all of those are there. The text view on fragment 2, I believe, it has text view 1. This is okay, but it's static. Now, if for this text view were going to be dynamic, we would need to name it something else. So let's call it frag2 text view 1. And now, when we save that and look at r.java again, we will see that all of a sudden, frag2 text view 1, fragment 1, fragment 2, text view 1, and toggle button 1. Text view 1 and toggle button 1 are on fragment 1. Okay, so now let's look at, but they're all hierarchically at exactly the same level. See, they're all sitting here in the subclass, or in the inner class ID of r.java. Okay, now let's look at main activity.java and see what we're doing. First of all, we want to grab fragment 2 as a relative layout. That's what it is. And now we can find it by ID using r.id.fragment2. And in onCreate, I am also setting fragment 2 to invisible. Okay. Then, here's my toggle fragment 2 method. Notice that toggle fragment 2 was asked for way over here in fragment2.xml. But because the hierarchy is at the same level of the activity, we can define it in activity, in main activity, and we do this. We just say, is fragment 2 visible? If it is, set it invisible. Otherwise, set it visible. And now, when we run our application, it'll ask us to choose, and we'll choose a correct emulator. So here's fragment 1. Fragment 2 we know is over here, but it's invisible. So we show fragment 2, and there it is. And we can hide fragment 2, and there we go. And on and on. The only reason that this is changing slightly is because this fragment layout is set to wrap its content, and the width of the button is changing slightly between show and hide because we're not using a fixed width font. Okay, so that's how it works. Thank you very much.